Solitude, in small doses, can be a gift. It lets the mind settle, the senses reset, the noise of the day fall away. Almost everyone craves a little of it now and then. But there's a version of being alone that isn't chosen. It's imposed. And when it stretches on without end, something in us starts to give way. As Blaise Pascal once wrote, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He meant it as a warning about restlessness, the way we distract ourselves from our own thoughts. But strip away the choice, take away the door that opens whenever we like, and that same room becomes something else entirely. The first thing to go is time. Without conversation, deadlines, or daylight to mark it, hours blur into days, and days blur into something with no shape at all. Sleep phrase. The body, cut off from its usual rhythms, starts sending strange signals. A racing heart, a dull headache, a stomach that no longer knows when it's hungry. Some people lose noticeable weight within weeks, not from lack of food, but from a nervous system stuck in a low, constant hum of alarm. Then the mind follows. Psychologists describe something researchers call social reality testing, the quiet, constant way other people help us check whether our thoughts and perceptions make sense. A glance, a laugh, a correction over dinner. It's so automatic we rarely notice it happening. Remove that mirror, and thought has nothing left to bounce off. It starts talking to itself and eventually believing itself a little too much. Suspicion creeps in where there was once just quiet. Ordinary sounds start to carry meaning they don't have. Fyodor Dostoevsky, who spent years in Siberian exile, put it simply, the degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons. He wasn't just talking about walls and sentences. He was talking about what a society is willing to do to a mind when no one is watching. Inside the skull, the changes are measurable. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, grows more reactive, quicker to read threat into silence. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of judgment, planning, and self-control, can actually shrink. The scale tips. Less reasoning, more raw feeling. Memory grows patchy. Concentration slips. And the longer the isolation lasts, the more entrenched this imbalance becomes, until anxiety, sudden anger, and impulsive decisions start to feel less like exceptions and more like the norm. Viktor Frankl, who survived years of forced confinement, wrote that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. It's a hopeful line and a true one. In many places, it's policy. Tens of thousands of people currently spend 22 to 24 hours a day alone in cells barely larger than a parking space. Some for infractions no bigger than an argument with a guard. Human rights organizations and legal bodies have called extended isolation a form of torture, not as a figure of speech, but as a formal classification. The practice has old roots. It was introduced in the late 1700s as an alternative to corporal punishment, born from the idea that silence and reflection could reform a person. People who've been through extended isolation are far more likely to show lasting symptoms similar to post-traumatic stress. Nelson Mandela, describing years in a cell barely large enough to lie down in, wrote, "It was in prison that I actually learned to think. Even he, a man who turned isolation into a kind of forge for his own resolve, didn't pretend it was painless. He simply refused to let it be the end of the story." Some places have tried a different approach entirely. Fewer people behind bars to begin with, far more invested in what happens to them while they're there. People find their way back to themselves fastest not in silence, but in the presence of others who still see them as capable of change.